Hello and welcome to the Science Fiction and Fantasy Marketing Podcast, the show where we help you establish your author brand, increase the size of your audience, and sell more books. I'm Lindsay Baroker, and I'm here with Jeffrey Poole and Joe Lalo. And this week's guest is T.S. Paul. He's going to talk about selling short fiction and actually making money doing it, and he's doing science fiction, so y'all want to listen up. But let me read your bio real quick. T.S. Paul, I think he also goes by Scott, was born in Mineral Wells, Texas, and has lived all across the country: Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Alaska, and finally Missouri. He's worked as a disc jockey, bookstore manager, cook, and bowling alley attendant. He has a telecommunications degree and a culinary degree, and gardening and cooking are his passions. He's always been a huge fan of science fiction and fantasy and started writing science fiction earlier this year, first publishing in February. And he's already got a number of titles out. I want to say at least 10, but 12. We'll ask him for more details on that. And he's selling quite well, even though he started out with a very short story, and all of his stories, I think, are probably like long novella length. But I guess I'll let you talk, Scott, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your books.
Okay, well, I sort of accidentally fell into writing. I got to be friends with an author online, Michael Anderle, and we got to be friends for a while. We talked, chat, and I became one of his beta readers. And finally one day he's like, you need to write a book. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. So he bugged me for 2 weeks. You need to write a book, you need to write a book, you need to write a book. Okay, fine, whatever, I'll write a book. So I wrote something, and he's like, ooh, this is really good. You need to finish it. So I finished it. So he's like, let's publish it. Okay, so we put it up on Amazon. Write another one. And I'm like, okay. So I wrote another one. So let's publish that. So put it up on Amazon. So then to write a third book. Let's publish it. Let's put that up on Amazon. So in the space of 18 days, I had 3 short titles on Amazon that started to make money. And it really surprised me. So then I wrote a 4th one. And then I got on this crazy, let's write a book every 2 weeks or every 3 week schedule, which is what I'm on now, and that's 12 titles later, and that's where I am at this moment. And I'm doing very well for short fiction. And they're all under 180 pages.
Now, were you one of those beta readers that emails the author and is like, you should do this, 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 and with your characters, and then they should have a baby, and then there should be that and that? Because I tell those people too, I'm like, you should write your own book.
No, I don't do that. I would never do that. I used to be a bookstore manager, so trust me, I've dealt with a few authors, and you don't want to give them any suggestions. It's never a good idea.
All right, what made you decide to start out with short stories? I think most new authors want to jump into a novel to get started.
I didn't really decide to do anything. I just kind of wrote until I stopped. And to be truthful, because I was a bookstore manager, I knew that new authors don't make any money and don't sell any books. So I just was like, okay, sure, what the hell, let's just put it up there. And then it started to sell, and I was kind of like, why is this selling? So as my confidence grew, my page count got longer. I mean, it started out at 60 pages. The second one is 60 pages. The third one's 109 pages or something like that. And then the 4th one is like 120 pages, and then 130 pages, and then 170 pages. And then we get up to 180, and the last 2 have been 180. So as my confidence grew, and I kind of like, hey, this isn't as hard as it looks, even though it is, I got a little faster. But because I was on this tight schedule, I had the story in my head, and once the story got out, I can't be Robert Jordan and do this 10-page walk across the campsite thing. I just can't do it. I just can't do it.
All right, and did you know from the beginning that you wanted to do a series, or did you just kind of do that first one and
I just kind of did that first one, and it was like, ooh, I could make this a whole series, and I just started doing one after the other, and I was only going to do 3, but then I was like, ooh, there's an option I could do 4, and each title is its own separate story. I mean, they have a little tiny cliffhanger, but for the most part, you can read them out of order and not get too confused. So I kind of did like the 1950s style and did like just a complete story. It's a series, but it's not. But it is.
It looks like you have about maybe nine titles in that core series, and then some kind of spin-off stories.
There's there's six. Oh, sorry. There's eight in the series, and then there's a prequel which I've got listed as a zero, but it's kind of a standalone, sort of. And then there's two trilogies, and then there's a short story collection which has only been out for like 3 weeks, and it's doing really well, which is surprising. It's so my short book is actually selling better than some of my other titles, and that's Wilson's War. That's the one with the robots on the cover. And then I'm working on a spin-off series right now.
Are you going to design that one so that people that are completely new to your stuff could jump in? Like, is it a new book one?
It's sort of a new book one. It's kind of a parallel series. I write for both teen and adult, but this is going to be pretty much only teen. I'm going to draw in some of the what I call the NPC characters, the non-player characters that I've created through the past few months that I haven't used in a while, and they're all going to kind of make appearances and flesh out some of the sideline stories that are talked about in the main series, which I'm not going back to. Some of the small arcs that I left open that I'm not going to go back and close. So I decided to write the shorter one, and it's I haven't come up with a name for it yet. There's going to be 3 in the series, hopefully. I'm about a third of the way through the book now, and it's due out next week, so I'm pushing.
And when you were kind of writing that first story, did you choose science fiction just because that's your favorite thing, or were you thinking, oh, people in this genre are doing well right now?
I like science fiction. I pretty much read science fiction. I read other stuff too, but I pretty much always drift back to science fiction.
All right, cool. Well, let me hand you to the guys to ask some questions, and we'll swing back and talk about marketing and some of the other stuff later on.
Yep. All right. So my first question here is for your shorter stories. Obviously, there's not a lot of time for exposition and complication. And from what it sounds like, you're not a huge fan of lots of exposition and complications. So,
no.
Do you feel like having a shorter story helps you have a quicker pace?
Somewhat. The stories go pretty well. I mean, they've got good character development. The story flows really well. I mean, they are quick. But a lot of my readers have said they like it quick. They like a short, to-the-point story. I also do short stories during the week. I put a free short story up on my blog every single Wednesday. So, yeah, I'm writing, a full, well, in my case, a shorter novel every 2 weeks, and then I've got 2 short stories sandwiched in between every 2 weeks, too. So
that is a remarkable output, I have to say.
I do about 5,000 words a day.
5,000 words is I have hit that average. I am not currently maintaining that average.
Most I've ever done is 10, and I was really pushing.
Yeah, it seems like you get much past that, and you're hitting the limits of human capacity. Although some of our guests have exceeded that on more than one occasion.
I couldn't see straight, but it's okay.
All right. So, what do you like? Now we know that high levels of detail for minor actions aren't an interest for you. What do you feel like is the most important thing to focus on when you have, let's say, an economy of words?
I think character development. I think you should be able to, your character. People should understand who your character is, what they're doing. You don't necessarily have to say, what every piece of art in the room is, but you need to at least say what the room is. The person walked into the cafeteria and the bad guys opened fire. I mean, you have to, have some sort of explanation, but it doesn't have to be, oops, sorry about that. So you have to have some sort of explanation and the character development, I think, is what I work on the most. I don't worry too much about the extra stuff, as one author calls it, the fiddly bits.
The fiddly bits. Yeah, I think it was Elmore Leonard who had a bunch of rules of writing, and one of them was basically don't describe anything. You don't have to describe. Everything should be minimal because that's what the reader's brain is for.
Exactly. I mean, if I'm describing a ship and how it goes, or what the engine part they're working on, or something like that, I try to keep it consistent across all the books. If I mentioned it 4 books ago, I'll mention it again. But the science is not going to. I'm not going to be one of those people who's going to explain how the ship is propelled across the space. I have had a comment that I wrote that the books were based on bad science, but I was like, they're set like 400 years in the future, and my idea of bad science and your idea of bad science are two different ideas. So, it's whatever.
Yeah, one might even say fictional science,
Yeah, that.
as though it was science fiction.
Exactly.
All right, so you already said that there's not really there's not a strong continuity because you can sort of read it out of order and not get too lost. But what's your focus? I shouldn't say. Yeah. What's your focus on continuity? Consistency. Do you sort of have a Bible of the story to make sure you don't trip over yourself?
I do, and I try to keep track, and they are continuous. I mean, it is a series, but each one has an ending, so it doesn't leave you hanging going, okay, where's the character going, or something like that. So, I mean, it does end. But there is, we're going to see that guy again later. That's coming. So, yeah, I don't really have it. I have a notebook that I keep that I write basic outlines down, but I'm a pantser, so I just kind of go with it. I know what's going to happen. I know who's going to do it, and I know what characters I want to involve in it, and then I just write it. So.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, if your work is short, it's almost like you don't need too much of a historical Bible, too much of a history like that, because you can very quickly reestablish context just by going back to.
Well, there's that, and then I also use. I do this short story collection or short story thing that's called Wilson's Wednesdays on my blog. And every Wednesday I put out a new short story. So I have to have one for tomorrow. I haven't read it yet. I'll read it tonight. And what I use with Wilson's Wednesday is I'll expand on something that I may have glossed over in the regular books. I had an instance where I had a character who, when the last book he was living at home, and in the new book he was not. And he had difficulties and then was killed. But I had a couple people who were like, well, how did he move out of the house? Why did he move out of the house? He had this $1 million mansion. Why is he not living in it? So I did a short story explaining what happened to him, and then put it up on the blog for free. So people were able to say, oh, okay, well, that's what happened to him. So I do that. I'll expand upon something or introduce a new character in the short stories, and then incorporate them into the regular series just because it's funny.
Sounds like a good way to keep people engaged. And also, it sort of sounds like again, just speaking for myself, I can totally imagine someone trying to read just the weekly short stories and piece together through context what happened in the stories that they didn't buy.
Well, they refer back to it, and what I did is I took the short stories off the blog and wrote a 5,000, actually it was more like 7,000 word origin story based on the character Wilson. Wilson is an AI character, so he doesn't have a physical body, and he's kind of the sidekick character, and he's kind of crazy, and he's plotting world domination and some other things, and so I took all the short stories off the blog along with this original story that I wrote, and I created the Wilson's War title, which is still selling very strongly, and it's ranking pretty well for a single author anthology, and so I threw that up in there. So if you get that, you can, if you're familiar, you read the origin story, then you can go, and they're in order, so you can kind of read. If, like you said, try to figure out what happened between the short stories. But if you like that particular character, you'll go back and read it. And I've had a lot of people who like that particular character from the regular series, and they go buy that, or they tune in onto my blog almost every Wednesday. I get between 150 to 300 page views a day. Today I'm a little over 200. So, I mean, I get 30 countries in the United States, and everybody hits my blog like crazy, looking for snippets and looking for the short stories. So
cool. I got one more question before I hand you off to Jeff. Did you model your setting on any particular sci-fi series or take major inspiration from a particular sci-fi source?
Not really. The first one's a kind of a cadet sort of character. I read a lot of that particular genre, but not really. I mean, that was a space station story, and I don't know. I didn't really take any. Yeah, I did get a few ideas from some authors, but I've been reading for science fiction for so long, I couldn't tell you which authors those were.
Yeah, we were saying before the mics went live, we were talking about how like everyone's creative output is just a mosaic of everything they've ever experienced. So
Well, there's that, and I'm what Michael Anderle calls a whale reader, or I used to be a whale reader, to where if you have Kindle Unlimited and you're reading your 4 books a month or whatever it is that they base their numbers on, I was reading 10 books a week, so 40 to 50 books a month. So I couldn't tell you what I read last week. I mean, not really. I mean, I can now because I only read like 2 books a month. But yeah, I mean, back in February, before February, I couldn't tell you what I'd read. I read so much.
there's one big literary mush in the back of your head.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, that covers my question, so I'll hand it off to Jeff, and then we'll get into marketing.
It's cool.
Alrighty. Okay, I've got a question for you. You mentioned that you were a book manager. Did
Yes.
any aspects of that being a book manager influence your writing? Like, I would imagine you were able to see what types of books sold the most, what covers were the most eye-catching, what people were interested in reading, if they were talking to you.
The eye-catching cover thing, and that's kind of, I belong to a group on Facebook called 20 Books to 50K. And it's something that Michael Anderle started, that he kind of created around me and a couple other people. So we started the group with 3 people, and now there's 300 in there. and I'm the group moderator because Michael has no time to do anything. And, of course, like I have time to do anything. And that's kind of one of the key things that we think that people should be paying attention to for publishing a book, is that, have a hot cover. I mean, get the best cover that you can possibly find. Either pay for it, make it yourself, or find somebody who makes covers and go, hey, make me a cover. Or, find the best cover that you can possibly afford. And then the second part would be put the main story or the main situation or what's happening with the character either on the first page or on the second page. Do not let somebody read 10 pages in because you lost them. Because they won't read that far, especially with Kindle Unlimited. They'll read 2 pages in and go, "Ew, I don't like this," and change books. So that kind of, from what I used to see with people reading in the science fiction section, because people will do that. They walk into the science fiction section, get a book, sit there and read. And if they don't like it within the first chapter, they're going to put it down and get something else because there's so many different options right there.
Very true.
And science fiction was our thing because I like science fiction, and I was the assistant manager at 2 different stores. I loaded that science fiction section up. I mean, you're not really supposed to do that at Walden Books, but I don't care. So, I mean, my managers didn't care. We sold stuff. So I just made everything special orders and just left them on the shelf. So yeah, we sold a lot of sci-fi. Go ahead.
That was my favorite section of Walden Books. I miss those stores. So.
I miss Walden Books because of the customer service. I mean, that is the one thing that Walden's had over Borders and Barnes & Noble, is that people in Walden Books knew where the books were. Borders and Barnes & Noble have no clue. Unless they shelved it recently, they have no idea where it is.
Very true.
They have to look it up at the computer, and it may not necessarily be there.
Very true. I hear you've had a run-in with trolls online. We're not talking about the kind that live under the bridge.
Yes, the kind that live under the bridge. Well, I don't pay that much attention to reviews because I don't think they matter. We can get into that later if you like. But
actually, that actually is my next question.
Oh, that's your next question. Okay, we'll start with the troll. So I had just put up the Wilson book, and it went from having 2 reviews to having 3 reviews. And because I don't normally notice the reviews, but I just happened to glance at it. So I clicked on it, and it was a 2-star review saying not so nice things, but the review didn't match the book. And it was kind of like, why it's more something that would be aimed at the first title, not the short story collection, because the storyline didn't match. So I clicked on the person's name on the, where it gives the name of the reviewer.
Right.
And it took me to his little page, and he had 6 of my books on there with the exact mirror review saying things like, I was a scammer, shame, 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 how dare I put that up online, I'm just out for money, I'm just trying to take people's money, that kind of thing. So I was kind of upset by that, not because of the bad review, because I really don't care, but I don't like being called a crook. So I took it to Amazon. Now, I'm aware of the fact that Amazon doesn't usually take reviews off. They don't do that. They won't do it. But I didn't tell them to take reviews off. I approached Amazon and said, this person is accusing me of things that I have not done, and is having troll-like behavior, and is depriving future readers from purchasing or enjoying the books on your service. So within 12 hours, they sent me an email, and they said, we will investigate. And they removed all of his reviews, except for the first one. But they took all the rest of them off. And it wasn't just me that he was going after. That review is still up on Wilson. It's the only 2-star review on there. There's a 4 and a 5 and a 2. And if you click on that, you still get his page, and he's got 2 other authors on there, and he went after them for writing short fiction. So I don't understand, if the person doesn't like short fiction, why is he going to short fiction? So it's kind of interesting. It just gives him an excuse to be mean.
So Amazon took all the other ones off except the one, thereby proving Amazon has a sense of humor.
They took 6 off and left that one up there. But that's okay. They took them off. I mean, they were all almost exact mirror image reviews. I mean, they were word for word almost exactly the same. And I thought it was kind of cool that they actually took them off. I didn't ask them to take them off. I just told them to investigate and investigate this person for writing basically trash online. I never said in my email, please take the reviews off. I didn't ask for that.
So maybe that's the key. If you say to Amazon, hey, just FYI, this person's talking all kinds of smack. I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to defend my name. Just wanted to let you know, have a nice day, and don't actually say, I demand you take this down.
There's that, and I suggested that because of his reviews, he was depriving someone else from buying the book. When in doubt, hit him in the pocketbook.
That's true.
My $2 is not hitting a multi-billion-dollar company, but you never know.
Yeah, that is true.
So,
Okay, so going right into the next question about the whole not believing in the reviews bit. Let's hear this one.
Okay, because if you look at my first title, my reviews are god-awful. And I will admit, I'll be the first person to admit that when I first put that first one out, it had some serious formatting and editing problems. And but
seems to be the case with most of us.
But of course, people were still purchasing it, and people were still reading it. And every other review, I would have someone say, "This is awesome, 4 stars," and then I would have somebody say, "God, you need to stop writing. You sound like a 5-year-old," and they put 1 star. I had somebody say, "How come I can't leave a 0 review?" I mean, just crazy stuff. Or they'd say, "Here's 4 stars, but your review, your writing is terrible, but I like the story." What does that mean? So I mean, lots of things like that. So basically, they don't mean anything because they weren't affecting my numbers. I did a podcast with Stephen Campbell on the author biz. That was the first one I did a couple of months ago. And when he first found out about me through my friends, and they were like, he's like, "How are you selling books, short fiction?" So at one point he looks at one of my books. He says, "Oh, I see you have, you're ranking in the top 5,000, and you've got, 3 categories under 100. That's pretty good. You've got a 5-star review. I see it's pulling everything there." I said, "Well, yeah, Stephen, that review didn't show up until this morning. I had those numbers way before I had any reviews." So they don't count for anything. I mean, I understand, don't get me wrong. I understand that if you use them for advertising and that kind of thing, and it makes you feel better because you're getting reviews from people. 30 years ago, if you were getting a review, you had a review on your book, it was from a literary agency or a newspaper or a magazine or something along those lines. We don't get those anymore. At least we don't, not indies. We get Billy Bob, who works at the gas station, who thought, "Hey, your book is kind of cool." But yeah, I mean, that doesn't matter to me. If I was getting a review from, the New York Times or something like that, yeah, I might think the review is kind of cool. But the review from my next door neighbor, no, I don't think so. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make any difference to me.
All right.
And I'm not. And I have, because my reviews are so bad, I'm not going to ever qualify for any of those sites that people want to put their stuff on, because they're like, "You have 2 stars." But yeah, I don't really care because my numbers are. I'm still selling books. I mean, I've sold. Let me pull the thing up here. I've sold 7,600 books since the 18th of February, with bad reviews. The title that they hate so much that they love to buy, which is The Forgotten Engineer, which is the first title. I've sold 1,706 copies of that with 188,000 pages read. And they
Not
hate
bad
it.
at all.
Apparently I have all those bad reviews, but for some reason I'm still selling 6 to 15 of them every single day.
Like,
So
oh, I
mean,
hate it. Where's the next one?
Pretty much. and to be truthful, that very first one, I just re-edited it not 2 weeks ago, and I'm pretty sure I fixed everything. I dumped it into ProWriter Aid and reformatted it and added like 3 sentences worth of more information. I'm not going to rewrite it. That's the biggest complaint, is that they like it's too short. I'm not going to go back and flesh it out. So because I have so much other stuff to do. So I went back and I did fix all of the typos, and I did fix all the grammar corrections and everything else, and I did that. I had a moment of my brain just froze, and I just could not write anything on my regular book, and I was like, I need to go fix that other one. So I did that instead.
Very cool.
So
All right. Well, that answers the question. All right. Let me hand you over to Lindsay. She's got some marketing questions for you.
that's fine.
All right. As you get me trying to type up some notes over here for the website. All right. Well, I guess let's start out asking, scroll, that you don't, in your description of your books, you don't actually say, like, this is a short story or this is a novella. I think you even call the real short ones books. Is that intentional, or do you think it's like less likely to put off readers who maybe don't want a short story?
I don't think it matters. A lot of people like shorter fiction, especially older people. I know we're all getting up in age, and we all think of ourselves as being older people. But a funny story is my stepfather. He's a big fan. He loves my stories, and he's really slow. He reads very, very slow. It takes him 2 to 3 nights to read 70 or 80 pages. And he really likes them, and a lot of his friends like them because they're shorter, and it doesn't take them as long. Well, my theory on that is, everyone has a phone in their hand. Everyone has, some sort of gadget that's got, they read books on. And if I'm going to read a book on my phone, I'm going to read a short book on my phone. I'm not going to read a really long book that's going to take forever. I'll just go and read on my book reader. So, it's kind of why I've left it at short and not tried to write super long, because they're selling. People buy them. And the page numbers are listed on Amazon. Right. I'm not going to make any apologies for someone who didn't bother to read that the pages are right there. I mean,
Sure.
it's
Well, I think, too, when you start calling things like novellas, and especially like a novelette or things like that, they're terms that writers are really familiar with, but some of them may not mean anything necessarily to a reader who doesn't have that background as a writer. So I know I stopped calling my Flash Gold things novellas, and I think I call them tales or something like that now.
Well, I have a Tales. My collection of shorter, which is 127 pages, I think it is I've called Tales, because they are tales, but I never bothered to correct them. And I've had my author friends are like, oh, you need to say those are titles, not books. And I try to do that, but to be truthful, they're books. I mean, I've sold, short books. So what? The thing is how do we define what a book is? I mean, if you, I'm not saying that I'm a classic writer, but Hemingway, The Old Man of the Sea is only 26,000 words. I mean, Hamlet's what, 18,000 words for Shakespeare? So I mean, I'm not Shakespeare.
Yeah, but those 18,000 words, they're going to take you hours to understand what he's saying.
Of course they are, but I'm just saying is that the if you go back to the stuff that our parents used to read in the 50s and the 60s, Ellery Queen, they could read those in an hour. I mean, and those were popular. They sold like crazy. If you tried to do that now, people are like, oh, it's too short. It needs to be longer. Well, it wasn't a problem 30 years ago. What's the problem now? So,
Right. I think a lot of people are like, they want to get their money's worth. And I guess we haven't really talked about pricing, but I should say that all of your stories are $2.99 on Amazon, including the one that's only 60 pages. I don't know, is it like 10,000 words or something like that?
It's like 13.
Okay. Have you had any pushback from readers on the higher prices for the shorter?
I have, but they keep buying it. They keep buying it, and it's really kind of funny because I've done 2 countdown deals since I've had the book out, and then I did the first one on The Forgotten Engineer when it first came available because I wanted to see. Everybody's like, "Oh, you need to do this, you need to do that." I'm like, "Okay, fine, I'll let it do it." So I sold a few of them. I mean, it's cool. But then when the second book came out, I did one for that, and the only reason I did it was my wife is doing some of my marketing, and we can talk about that. And I wanted her to see what it was like, and I only let it go for 3 days, and I actually sold more at the regular price than I did at the discounted price, which was interesting. So I don't discount them at all. $2.99 is a really nice price. People don't even blink. I mean, you could buy an app for your phone or a $3 soda, and people don't even blink when it's $3, $2.99. But if you go a little higher, they have brain freeze or something. James Patterson's just announcing that he's writing short, and his are shorter than mine, and he's charging $4.99. Of course, he's James Patterson. I understand that, but still.
Right.
And he's not even writing those himself, so it's okay.
It's working for him, probably.
It is. Now, I do have the 2 compilations on there are $7.99. And I sell those too, and people still buy them at $7.99. I've sold on the first one, I've sold 385 of them, and on the second one, I've only sold 76. But pages combined is right around 350,000 pages read. So, and I've had since February, I've had 2,200,000 pages read total across all titles.
Yeah, I would think that actually that the higher price, especially on the shorter books, might make people more likely to, if they have the KU subscription, to borrow it. And you could actually be making, I suppose it depends on the length there, you could be making as much or more from the page reads.
It's about half right now.
Is it?
But see, I don't believe in 99 cents or free at all. I won't do it. And I only did the countdowns the one time, well, the 2 times, but I won't do it, and I won't mark them down. And the reason I won't is that when I was still a book person in retail, the cheaper we kind of made fun of the ebooks that at that time, and that was 10 years ago. More than that, actually. And, because we considered, not 99 cents, is it any good for 99 cents? People have that illusion of if it's so cheap, why are they giving it away? Even though I understand why it's being done, but it's not me, it's the readers. So, and is there any guarantee that if you give it away at 99 cents or free, that they're going to go back and pay for the higher priced book? I mean, you would know more than I would, but it doesn't seem to work that way. And they have no problem paying $2.99 for the short fiction that I have up there. And the new one that I just put out on Tuesday of last week has been selling like hotcakes for $2.99. It's Infiltration. I've sold 236 of them in less than a week. So I mean, that's what they want.
Yeah, it's great if you can get that $2.99 just to get the higher royalty, of course. I think 99 cents is only worth it when it's a sale and you're getting a BookBub ad or something out of it. Or if you're just selling so much that you're like in the top 200 of the Amazon store with that price. But, with KU, it kind of makes it interesting because I actually was just talking to Daniel Aronson, and he released a new space opera, and he started it at 99 cents and was like top 200, and then he bumped it up to $2.99, and he started getting more borrows to sales, but it stayed at like top 200. So yeah.
I fell into $2.99. I did it by accident. I didn't do it on purpose. Because Michael Anderley's been like my mentor originally when I first started doing this. He was helping me along and putting it up, and he let me put it up on Amazon without him like telling me what to do. And Amazon suggests a price, and they suggested $2.99, and I'm like, whatever, and threw it up there at $2.99, and it started to sell, which is kind of funny, which is why we laughed. So to keep with there's a train now. I told you you're gonna hear one. To keep with that price and to keep with the branding, we just left all the books at $2.99 because that way it made it easy. All my books were the same price except for the trilogies.
Yeah, and if you tried selling it at 99 cents and it's doing better at 2.99, go for it, for sure.
Which is why I leave it as it is. And I've suggested a couple of times of marking it down, and my wife hits me upside the back of the head. She's like, "What the hell are you doing?" No. So she keeps me on the straight and narrow on that. She's like, "It's selling at the 2.99 price. Stop messing with it." So
All right, so how much do you think it helps you that all of your, or most of your short stories are in the same series, and that, it's more of an auto buy, I think, when it's a series and people are into the characters and invested? And
I think it's a lot because I wrote the prequel, which is the Lost Pilot book, the one that's got the really cool black space station on the cover, and I wrote that one basically as an intro to the books that I've been working on lately. I wrote it as a prequel to basically books 7, 8, and 9 because things that happened in the prequel 100 years previous were going to impact what happened in books 7, 8, and 9. Some of the exact same characters from 100 years ago were going to reappear. So I kind of wanted to give my readers a chance to kind of get the background story. And I wrote that and put it up there, and they hated it. They hated it a lot because it didn't have the regular characters that I write every week on. They wanted Athena Lee and they wanted Wilson, which is the AI character, and that particular title doesn't have those characters. It has this gentleman named Sam, and it had a few other characters. It had one get eaten by a dinosaur, which was kind of funny, but it had other characters which they didn't want, and they weren't happy at all. But I still sell copies of it. People go back and read it, and Sam actually has his own following now. And people have actually said, "You need to write another one of these." I'm not planning on doing that. I was going to do some short stories, but that's it. But yeah, I discovered that they don't like that, so I have to have the Athena books, which is why I did stretch those out a little bit, but I still am writing at least one of those a month in that series, because if I don't do it, I get yelled at. So I don't want to get yelled at.
yeah, it's lots of fun when you get to the point where you have a few series going with different sets of characters, and you can never make everyone happy because you're not writing in somebody's favorite series.
Well, that's coming. That's coming. I'm working on a separate series, but it still has the main characters in it because it's a parallel series. The first chapter had the characters that everybody wants in it just as a side thing. They were at a called a school opening, and they were talking and had a conversation going along with other characters that I'm writing about, and we may see them or we may not see them, but they're not going to really be in the rest of this book. They were just in the very beginning because it's a parallel. It's happening at the same time, but kind of over here and not in the main storyline. But then, see, I have a paranormal series that my wife wants me to write in October for Halloween. So that won't have anything to do at all with the science fiction series. And then there's another science fiction series, which my wife gave me the idea for a couple nights ago, which is kind of percolating its way through my head, which won't have anything to do with the series either. And it won't even be in the same universe. So that's
obviously
next
you need
year.
to write faster so you can.
Yeah.
You're just not putting out enough right now.
I'm putting out 2 a month, which is pretty fast. So and then I have 4 short stories every month too, because I do it every Wednesday, and those run between 1,000 to 2,000 words.
Yeah, I was actually curious to ask you about that, about the ones you're putting on your blog. Do you think that that's kind of helping keep the momentum going, or
It is. Because I advertise, I constantly, everything that I write, check out Wilson Wednesdays, check out the free short stories on my blog, and people click over there and they want to read the adventures of the crazy AI or other characters that pop in, and I do introduce new characters and then incorporate them into the series, or explain what happened to that guy, or why did that guy die, or why is he living in a shack, or something, something along those lines, because the AI stole all his money. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. I mean, I do that, and they really like the short stories. They go crazy if I don't. I skipped one day, and the only reason I did is I had family in town, and I did not have time to write it. And I got a little bit of feedback from that. They were like, "Where's the story? How come you don't have the story up?" But I even had on the blog, "It'll be out tomorrow, I promise." So yeah, it's and that's something else. I don't have a mailing list. I use my blog.
Yeah, I love the idea of putting up the extra tidbits. I've done a little bit of that over the years, but I guess I always feel the pressure to get the next book out, and so I've done the character interviews, but
yeah. I post every other day. I post something, And I just had a gentleman in Cincinnati who works at a library who was doing a lecture series on independent authors and writing, and he contacted me and thought I was doing a great job. And he said, I love your blog, and I love the idea of your books, and I'm going to talk about you in this series. So I sent him some free books. and he did. He wrote about me and directed people toward my blog, which I thought was kind of cool. So, something different.
Yeah, that's great too, because it's like so many authors, I feel, especially fiction people, don't know what to put on their blog. So they don't post anything, or they don't have a blog. Or like I gotten into, just since I started doing this podcast all the time, I don't feel the need to talk about this stuff so much, and I just do like, here's the sample chapter, enjoy. But
I've been on your blog and I've looked at your stuff, and because I have your books, and Michael Anderle does the same thing. For a while he was posting whole chapters, and I'm like, why are you posting whole chapters? Just do a snippet, like a random snippet. So he started doing that, and he actually got better results with the snippet than he did with the full chapter, because it drove the fans crazy, because they were like, why are you only giving me this much? And it was just, it was really funny, because it drew him in and made him want to, start bugging him. When's the book coming out? When's the book coming out? When's the book coming out? So, and I do the same thing. I take a random snippet and don't reveal any of the surprises, and then stick it up there.
yeah, I do that on Facebook a little bit. Take out snippets of dialogue, and I think it really builds the anticipation for the next book coming out.
I do that. I do it on Facebook too, because I connect the two. I'll sometimes do one that's yeah, I see that. I do one that's like, this is a snippet only for Facebook, not for the blog, and then I makes the blog people go to Facebook and go see what that snippet was, because makes it interesting, keeps it interesting.
All right, one more question from me, because I heard you talk about this on another interview. Where do you get your covers?
Ah, the covers. So I do something a little different than other people do. I purchase my artwork as artwork. I go on to DeviantArt. I have several artists that I have located and kind of cultured and talked to, and they sell me completed works, and I take a piece of it and make a cover out of it. So I'm not just necessarily using the whole picture. I'm just using part of the picture, and they're letting me have royalty-free access to it, so I can use it for whatever I need to do. And I give them credit, both in the book, on the blog, on the Facebook page, and in a couple of the author groups I belong to. So they get lots of exposure and lots of hits on their blog and their group and everything else. Yes, but it doesn't fit together like puzzle pieces. I see that on there, but no, one of them could. I have a future cover that I may do 3 pieces, because the picture that I have that I paid for would look really cool as just 3 individual pieces, like, of a cover, you could line them up, that would look really cool. And I'm thinking about that for a future cover, but for some future books. But I just buy the cover and then take a small piece of it and buy the picture and use a small piece of it for the cover.
And do you just kind of surf through the site there and look for stuff that will kind of fit with the coming story you've got?
I do, but DeviantArt is a black hole. If you get on DeviantArt and start looking, you could be in there. 1 hour will turn into 12. I mean, you could spend all day looking at stuff. So I just kind of stumbled across some ideas that I like, and I contacted half a dozen different people, and a lot of them were like, no, I'm not selling you any art, and no, yeah, you can do this. But then a couple of them were like, hey, that's cool. And the first one was like, what do you think would be a good price? Because he had no idea. So for under $100, I'm getting access to a really cool picture, and I only started doing that after book 4. So book four, which is Revolutionary, which is the one with the ship on the cover, is really cool, and it's this digital artist that did that. And he's done about half of the newer ones, and the other half is done by another digital artist that I found. And I used the first guy as a reference for the other guy, and he's a German artist, and he was kind of cool. He's like, hey, that's a good price. He actually has raised his prices on me just a little bit, but it's still under $100, so it's not that bad. And I'll pay it because they're beautiful. So, And then I kick it over to a friend of mine who puts the wording and the branding on it for me, and then put it out. So.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is if you did the font stuff yourself in order to kind of make it all tie together and look the same.
They do look the same. It's using the same font, but I don't do that. I can do that, but mine look like caca. So no, we don't do that. I do make my own advertisements that I've been running lately, but I've been doing this with Canva. So, um,
No, that's a good idea. I love that idea. I don't think we've had anybody suggest that as a tip before. To get it's basically a custom ebook cover, even if it's
yes.
not like your characters, without using the stock photo sites. Because your first book, I was like, oh, I've used that space station. It's on one of my pen name books.
The first three covers, which is the Forgotten Engineer and Engineering Murder and the Ghost Ships of Terra, those are stock pictures. They came from Dreamstein, and I paid the licensing fees for those. But the others I got from a different source, and they're original. So I mean, now in theory, those artists could charge somebody else to do it, but you'll have to, I don't think they will because they've been pretty cool about not doing that with me so far. And then I can use them for other stuff. I've used them for advertisements and that kind of stuff, and I don't have to pay another licensing fee for it. So it's kind of cool. But if you're on DeviantArt, you have to ask them. I mean, make sure you ask somebody because they get a little fussy if you start downloading their stuff without their permission. And a lot of them are really cool. I mean, you just have to kind of do some hunt and peck and search, but it is a black hole. I mean, you get on there and you type in space station, and you're going to get, like 50, 100, 300 pages of space stations, and you're going to be like, 4 hours later, you're like, God, do I have to look at another space station? But it's like Etsy. You get on Etsy and you're gone. The whole day is gone. So yeah, it's
Etsy's worse because you then have like a $500 PayPal bill that you're like, well, I don't remember buying that last night. What is that?
yeah, it's well, you can do that on DeviantArt too. A lot of these guys sell prints and posters and that kind of stuff. So I mean, yeah, you can seriously get lost.
And do you do like a contract or anything, or do they give you a contract to give you the certain rights for the ebooks?
I keep all the email copies and everything, so I have all that stuff printed out. So but it's some of them are more detailed than others. I haven't dealt with the more expensive ones yet, and I say yet because I'm trying to find someone to do my covers for my paranormal series, which I haven't written yet, but I'll be starting in October. So I'm in the process of doing that right now. And yes, I'm going to have to pay more money for those. It's going to cost me probably just a little bit more than I'm paying right now, but it's okay. But I in anticipation of that, I've already bought, I think I have 4 other pictures I could use for covers for sci-fi, so I'm pretty set till the end of the year.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, let me pass you to Joe and let him talk at you for a little bit.
Certainly.
Yep. Some of my stuff has sort of been touched upon, but I'm going to start with all of your stuff is obviously in Kindle Select.
It is.
And therefore, and that's obviously, like, from listening to what you've said, you've always been in Kindle Select. Like,
yes.
You've never been wide. You have any plans to go wide?
Next year.
Next year you're going to go wide.
The new series that my wife gave me the suggestion for a couple of days ago, and it's really only a title and a very brief description. She just was brainstorming, and it's like, ooh, you ought to use this. And I was like, ooh, that's kind of good. And I'll do that if I go wide, which I intend to. I'll do it next year, and I'll do those books. I'm not going to use my regular series. I'm not going to do that to people. I'm not going to try to write a book in the same universe and put it wide when everything else is on Kindle. I'm not going to do that. So...
yeah, that would certainly confuse people who were, particularly if you have a loyal fan base of dedicated KU users.
Yes,
But
I do because they hot and heavy. I mean, you figure 2 million pages in 4 months, so somebody's reading it.
Yeah, absolutely. That was another question I was going to have. We've talked about this a bit. See, you said about half of your earnings, I would say, come from page reads.
Yeah, I mean, right now here I'll pull up my book report. Let's go to the monthly. There we go. So it looks like, using today as an example, and I'll just give you the numbers. Right now, I've got for total sales. Now, we know book reports, kind of not totally accurate, but pretty close. We're looking at $358. So in Select, I've got $191, and for royalties, I've got $197. So
there you go.
Just pretty close, yes.
Yeah, all right, so yeah, it'll be definitely interesting for you, like when you eventually do try going wide. I think it's valuable, even for someone who undeniably makes a tremendous amount from being in Select. I think it's valuable to have an experience with wide, just as sort of an A/B comparison. Because if nothing else, being an indie means that you get to experiment.
Well, yeah, I'd like to try it. I mean, I still occasionally buy books from Barnes and Noble, and not very often, and I haven't bought a Kobo in at least a year, but I have in the past.
Yeah.
I pretty much just do Amazon. So.
As do a great many people, I've noticed. And just one last thing about KU before I hand you off again.
Certainly.
Is you got into KU with KU 2.0 was already in place, so they were already doing page reads as opposed to borrows.
Yes.
And back in the borrows days, super short books were extremely lucrative because they counted for the same as a full-length book. And now the current format, longer books result in more page reads and therefore are more lucrative. And I was going to ask if that had sort of influenced your recent lengthening of your books.
It hasn't. The only reason that the lengths have gotten longer is the story has gotten better. Because I'm a pantser, I'm writing the story, and I'm not necessarily aiming for 180 pages, but I'm shooting for the longer storyline because there's so much that needs to be done. I can't get it done in a short amount of time. The stories have gotten more and more intricate since that very first one. The new one that's coming out, not the one I'm working on now, but the one scheduled for 3 weeks, well, call it 4 weeks from now. That one's going to probably be longer than 180 pages, maybe, because I've got about 4 story arcs open right now that are all supposed to end in that particular title. So I'm going to have to explain all those different parts, and it may hopefully be a little bit longer than my fans will finally get something that's 200 pages. Wow, that'll be amazing. But I don't know if that's going to happen or not. We'll see. The gods of Amazon have to decide how many pages it is, once I put it up there. But because there's always a question. When this last one went live last week, I was kind of like, how many pages is it? I have no idea. We'll have to wait and see. 2 days later, hey, 180 pages. Cool. So, yeah. I wasn't real sure.
Yeah, the Amazon page count is kind of a tricky thing to figure out.
And that's 280 pages in a row. So the Martian Inheritance and the Infiltration were both the same length. So I was kind of excited about that.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to hand you off to Jeff now for the last couple of marketing questions.
All right, you mentioned that your sole contact to the outside world pretty much is your blog. Do you have any sort of presence on social media at all?
I do Facebook ads like crazy.
Facebook's okay. So how well has that worked for you?
It actually works for me really well. I know a lot of people are like, I don't understand how Facebook doesn't work, and they're like, I spent all this money and blah 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 and everything else. But no, Facebook works for me really really well. Today I actually ran a little experiment just to see, because I was going to be on your show. I wanted to see, so I ran ads for Insurrection, which is an older title. Well, older for me. It's like a month ago, and and Wilson's War, which was like 3 weeks ago, which is also a little older for me because remember I'm writing so fast. So they had started to slip in numbers a little bit, and I ran some specific ads just for them, and Insurrection went up about 1,000 pages read, and Wilson's War went up about 1,000 pages read with three or four actual sales, and that was from not paid ads, but from just the free stuff by going on the groups. And my wife belongs to she does a lot of this for me. She belongs to about 50 Facebook Kindle books kind of groups that you sign up for, and you can go on and post books. So I got over here on her computer, and because she's working, I jumped on her computer and spent about an hour posting my book across all of those Facebook groups, and it takes about 10 minutes on each one or 5 minutes on each one, depending on how fast you're sticking it in there. And I managed to get 2,000 pages read on 2 books just doing that. I just wanted to see, just for this show. But she does it for me. She, about 2 days a week, she'll pick a book and throw some ads up there and go with it. But I run. I've got about $300 worth of Facebook ads running right now, worldwide, different countries. Facebook ad works really well for me. I make the ad on Canva usually. Sometimes I'll just take the Amazon page too, and then stick it up and fine tune the analytics for what I'm searching for. Mm-hmm. I've done a few goofy things where the first one I did was I fine tuned something for English-speaking people in the United States who mainly women who like science fiction, and they also like cats. And then I posted a picture of our cat and boosted it. And then I got like 3,000 hits or something like that, 3,000 likes on my page. So then I turned around and used the same list and put my new book in there and sent it out and got about the same amount of likes on the page along with like 200 clicks from those same people.
Interesting.
So I've done that, and then I've got one running right now. One of the planets in my books, the predominant religion is Pastafarianism. I'm not going to explain it. I'll let you look that one up. It's kind of funny. And there's a kind of a cult following in this country and worldwide in some other countries, and they have their own webpage. There's a link on my blog if you really want to go there, but I just did it because it's funny. And I have an ad running right now that says, what if there was a planet that was completely Pastafarian? And I'm running it right now, and I've actually got, I think, like 400 clicks on it right now already. So I don't know if they're buying the book or not. We'll have to see. But they're at least looking at it. So
people trying to figure out what that word is, like,
I had a fellow author go, what does that mean? I said, we'll let you Google it. I'm not going to explain it because you're going to think I'm insane. So it's more than I already am. So it's okay. But there's basically it's a religion. Well, it's your opinion of whether or not it's a religion, but it's a religion based upon a flying spaghetti monster.
Okay, so I'm going to have to Google it now. I'm curious.
Either Google Pastafarianism or Google FSM, and that'll get you your link there. FSM.
Damn, I'm going to have to look. Curiosity.
So, like I said, you'll think I'm crazy, but I put that in there in the book, and I did it because it was funny, and I've kind of kept it as a theme with some of the characters following that religion in the books, and I've done it because it was amusing. And now I'm using it as an advertising tool, and it actually is working, so it's kind of funny.
Interesting. All right. Is there any type of marketing you've done that you feel more authors should be taking advantage of?
Facebook.
Because
Facebook also does Instagram, too. When you sign up for the ad, it's on Instagram. So you're doing both at the same time. I don't know. See, I don't have a problem with paying. The thing I have, the thing with Facebook, and I just talked to somebody about this yesterday. A lot of people are like, Facebook is too expensive, or I'm spending too much money on it, or everything else. If you look at it this way, if you're making $100 a day in book sales, that means you're making $700 a day. You can spare one day a week, so you can spare $100 to run some Facebook ads that'll run for 2 weeks for $100. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it's your first month, yeah, it's going to hurt. But if it's your third month when you're getting $100 regularly, it's not going to be that bad. So, I mean, you can spare 1/7 of your paycheck to put an ad up online that's, in theory, could net you more money than the $100. So, I mean, it's not that bad. As long as you're not spending more than what you're making in one day, you're fine. If you're spending more, you're crazy. So, if you're only making $300 and you're spending $500, you're out of your mind. But if you make $300 in a day, you can afford to spend that much for 2 weeks worth of advertisement because you can afford it from just that one day. But I wouldn't go over that.
Right. Good deal. All right. My final question I have for you: what piece of advice would you give a younger version of yourself if you ever had the opportunity?
Never, ever, ever write a book using OpenOffice.
Oh, come on. That's supposed to be compatible with all Microsoft Office products. Oh, did we lose you?
You started talking about Microsoft. His computer probably froze. It's probably a PC.
Serious, right?
Oh, wait. There goes our Microsoft sponsors that will never sponsor us.
Okay, Microsoft, I'm sorry. All right. Well, we can wait for him a little bit to come back, but...
now we have to talk about something interesting.
Flying spaghetti monster. That's interesting. I'm gonna have to. Do people really believe in that?
There he is.
I think I lost you.
There he is.
Yep. Hello.
You there? Oh, we see him moving. I don't see him. I don't hear him. Scott, you there?
I heard a cry.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear
Uh-oh,
us?
he doesn't hear us. All right, there's supposed to be no radio silence or dead air in on podcasts, right? Well, we were about to the end of the show, so
Yeah.
I guess I will just tell you that you can visit Scott at tspaul.blogspot.com is his site where you can kind of check out his stories that he's doing every week. And of course, he's on Amazon right now with Kindle Unlimited, and so you can check out all his books for free if you're in that. Otherwise, you got to pay the big money, the $2.99 for the short story.
Now, come on, who's with me? We all got to go to Google and look up Flying Spaghetti Monster just to see what comes up.
I don't really feel that compelled to
Oh,
Google
come
that. I
on.
don't know.
Where's your sense of adventure?
I don't think I could spell the word that he said. I could probably. Spaghetti's kind of tough to spell. I don't know. This is what happens when we have to ad-lib. It doesn't go well.
Yeah, you don't want us ad-libbing. All righty, well, I guess we can probably just wrap it up then. Scott, if you can
Hopefully
hear...
the biggest secret he was, it was going to be revealed in the last 30 seconds of the show is not now revealed.
Gotta have to buy the books, but all righty. Well, Scott, if you can hear us, we appreciate all the info. And to everyone else out there listening, we appreciate you tuning in.
All right. Good night, everybody, or good morning whenever you happen to be enjoying our show. Good afternoon.
Take it easy, everybody.
Tea time.
Yeah.
Hurry up and turn it off.